Like you're just drowning in tech news.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like AI this and big tech that and crypto's doing something.
It's like drinking from a fire hose.
Exactly.
So for this deep dive, we went and watched a ton of recent videos from Bloomberg Technology on YouTube.
We did.
And we're going to be going over a bunch of cool stuff like the stock market and what's going on with the biggest tech companies.
Right.
AI advancements, which seem to be coming out every day.
It's crazy.
Some interesting changes in this social media ad landscape.
Definitely.
Crypto regulations and what's happening there.
Yep.
The continuing rise of fintech companies. They're just everywhere now.
Yeah.
And even some stuff that seems straight out science fiction like biocomputing.
Yeah, biocomputing is wild. So as different as these topics sound,
Right.
there are a lot of really fascinating connections between all of them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, our goal today is to kind of highlight those connections for you and hopefully give you a clear understanding of everything that's going on.
Right. We want to give you the big picture and maybe even make you think about things in a new way.
Exactly. So why don't we just jump right in and let's start by talking about those massive companies that are running the show, the Magnificent Seven.
Yeah, they've definitely hit a bit of a rough patch in the market recently with what's been happening there.
Well, it's interesting because we're seeing macroeconomic factors really start to affect the performance of these companies. Specifically, we've seen some downward pressure on their stock prices.
Okay.
And a lot of this can be attributed to uncertainty about potential tariffs.
Right.
The worry is that these tariffs could slow down economic growth, hurt consumer spending.
Make businesses a bit more hesitant to invest.
Exactly.
And uncertainty makes everyone nervous, right? Especially
Yeah.
investors. So I guess it makes sense that some people are choosing to cash out while they're ahead.
Yeah, I mean, when the future's uncertain, even if you think it's going to be positive in the long run, some investors will just decide to take the gains they've already made and not risk it.
Makes sense, but Amazon's valuation seems to be a lot lower than the others now. What's happening there?
So Amazon's actually in a pretty interesting position right now because they've been killing it in terms of their own performance.
Okay.
They've had really strong earnings growth, and they've also been super focused on cutting costs and becoming more profitable.
Okay.
And that's actually brought their valuation multiples down, meaning that their stock is priced lower relative to their earnings. So now they're actually cheaper than Apple
Wow.
and even Walmart and Costco.
That's a pretty big shift. I remember when Apple was always considered the safe bet.
Yeah, things are definitely changing, but overall, these companies are still seen as solid investments.
Okay, so despite all this market uncertainty, their fundamental strength is still there.
Exactly. I mean, look at Amazon, for example. They're still dominating online retail. Their cloud business is huge, and even their advertising is growing like crazy.
Right.
So, yeah, there might be some short-term ups and downs, but the core of their business is still really strong.
Okay, so let's move on to something totally different. The whole ARM versus Qualcomm antitrust thing. What's going on there?
So this is turning into a pretty big fight in the chip industry, and it's all about competition. Basically, Qualcomm is claiming that ARM is acting in an anti-competitive way.
Okay.
They're basically saying that as ARM starts to design its own chips and become more of a direct competitor,
Right.
they're going to restrict Qualcomm's access to the tech they need to make their processors.
So Qualcomm is basically saying you can't compete with us and then cut us off from the tools we need to compete.
Yeah, basically. And this is actually coming after ARM lost a lawsuit to Qualcomm back in 2024.
Oh, wow.
So that might hurt ARM's position a bit legally, but either way, it's a huge distraction for both of them.
Especially with the AI market moving so quickly.
Exactly. The speed of innovation in AI is just insane, and this could really slow things down for the whole industry. I mean, Qualcomm even mentioned they might be interested in Intel, who just got a new CEO.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so it seems like they have plans beyond just smartphones.
Well, let's talk about some of those AI advancements because there seems to be a new one every day.
Yeah, for real.
Anthropic's new partnership with Databricks caught my eye. What's that all about?
So this partnership is all about making Anthropic's AI models more accessible to businesses. Basically, they're partnering with Databricks, which is a huge data platform used by like 10,000 companies.
Oh, wow.
So now all those companies are going to have access to Anthropic's super powerful AI directly through Databricks.
So it's about making it easier for companies to use Anthropic's AI, but what are the specific benefits for those companies?
Well, Anthropic's models are really good at programming and coding.
Oh, okay.
So by combining those models with Databricks' huge data infrastructure, these companies can build much more advanced applications.
That makes sense. And their fastest growing area is code generation.
Yeah, exactly.
Seems like this whole AI competition is heating up even more with companies like DeepSeek coming out of China.
Oh, yeah, it's getting intense. DeepSeek and other Chinese AI companies have been releasing a ton of open source AI models, and that's putting a lot of pressure on the profits of those big Silicon Valley companies.
Right, because they've always charged a premium for their AI.
Exactly. And this is something we've seen in other industries too, like electric vehicles and solar
Where
panels.
Chinese companies come in and drive the prices down.
Exactly.
So I guess this could be a good thing for everyone because it could make AI tools more affordable and force companies to focus more on user experience and services.
Yeah, I think so. It could lead to a lot more innovation as companies find new ways to stand out.
Okay. And we also heard about some updates to Google's Gemini and OpenAI's ChatGPT.
Yeah, Google released Gemini version 2.5, and they're boasting about improvements to its reasoning abilities,
Okay.
which is really important for making AI more intelligent. And then OpenAI made some changes to ChatGPT to make image editing easier.
Oh, nice.
So now it's way more practical for things like creating diagrams and logos.
And those little improvements make a huge difference, don't they? Oh, and speaking of AI making headlines, Elon Musk's Grok has been stirring up some controversy in India.
Oh, yeah, right? Grok made some comments about Indian politics and the prime minister specifically, and it's caused quite a stir over there.
Right.
It just goes to show how much of an impact AI can have on political discussions and not always in a good way.
Okay, so let's shift gears and talk about social media, specifically X, which used to be Twitter. Their advertising revenue is starting to recover, which is pretty surprising considering everything that's happened since Elon Musk took over.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. According to a recent forecast, X is actually on track to see advertising revenue growth in 2025.
Okay.
But it's important to remember that this is more of a recovery than a rebound. I mean, it's still going to be lower than what Twitter was making back in 2019.
So it's not a total comeback, but it's still good news. So what's causing this growth?
Well, one thing that's driving it is actually fear among advertisers.
Really?
Yeah, some companies are basically spending money on X just to avoid getting on Elon Musk's bad side.
Oh, wow. That's kind of crazy. But I guess it makes sense.
Yeah. But the good news for X is that they've also been attracting a new group of advertisers, specifically small and medium businesses,
Okay.
which is a group that Twitter never really managed to tap into.
Interesting. So they're getting new advertisers, but the total spending is still down because those advertisers have less money to spend.
Exactly. It's a mixed bag, and the situation is still really fragile.
Right.
There are still concerns about brand safety, and the platform is still pretty volatile. And of course, there's all the uncertainty surrounding TikTok.
Right. That's a huge factor. If TikTok were to get banned in the U.S., who do you think would benefit the most?
Well, if TikTok were to disappear, the companies that would probably gain the most are Meta with Instagram Reels and YouTube with Shorts.
Okay.
They're the most obvious alternatives for users and advertisers.
Makes sense. What about X's competitors like Threads and Blue Sky? Are they gaining any ground?
So they definitely saw a jump in users after the election, and that growth seems to be continuing.
Okay.
But even with X losing some users, those platforms are still way smaller overall.
Okay, so now let's talk about the world of finance. It seems like crypto regulation is finally starting to gain some traction in Washington.
Yeah, there's definitely been some movement on that front. We're seeing more and more traditional financial institutions getting interested in holding Bitcoin and other crypto assets.
Right.
And a big part of that is the growing clarity coming from Washington.
So what are some of the specific developments we're seeing?
Well, the Senate Banking Committee just voted on some stablecoin legislation, and the House is expected to do the same soon.
Okay.
Congress is also trying to get rid of a crypto tax policy that was put in place by the last administration.
Interesting.
And some of the key areas they're focusing on are creating a framework for stablecoins
Right.
and a market structure framework for digital assets overall. And even the SEC is holding meetings to figure out how to make the crypto space more competitive within their existing authority.
So they're not just creating new rules, they're
Yeah.
also trying to undo some of the old ones that were holding the industry back.
Exactly. It seems like there's a real effort to make the U.S. more competitive in this space.
Okay. But crypto still has a bit of a bad reputation from its early days. Are they doing anything to address that?
Yeah, that's a good point. Even with regulations and enforcement changing, public perception takes time.
Right.
But as the industry matures and more established financial institutions start using it, that reputation should improve.
Okay, so now let's talk about fintech. Mercury's having a moment, right? They just got a $3.5 billion valuation after their latest funding round.
Yeah, they're doing really well. Mercury's basically found a niche by focusing on banking services for businesses,
Okay.
especially startups, e-commerce companies, and professional services. They've been profitable for 10 quarters in a row.
Wow.
And last year, they made $500 million in revenue.
That's incredible. And now they're going to use this new funding to expand even more.
Right, they're going to invest in new products like Mercury personal invoicing tools and accounts, payable solutions, and they're even thinking about acquisitions to grow even faster.
And they're not technically a bank, but they partner with banks to provide FDIC insurance.
Yeah, exactly. So they offer the convenience of a tech company, but with the security of a traditional bank.
Makes sense. So it sounds like they have big plans, but they're not going public anytime soon.
It seems like going public is part of their long-term plan, but they're only 6 years old.
Right.
So they're focused on building a strong foundation for the future, and they recently did a tender offer to give their employees some liquidity, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a nice perk.
Yeah.
Okay, last but not least, let's talk about biocomputing, which basically sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. So biocomputing is all about merging biological components with computers,
Okay.
like connecting human neurons to chips.
It's hard to even imagine.
I know, right? And there are already researchers who have taught clusters of living brain cells to play video games.
Wait, what?
Yeah, it's crazy they've actually gotten these brain cells to play Pong.
That's just mind-blowing. It makes you wonder what the future of computing is going to look like.
Yeah, I mean, it really makes you question what intelligence even is.
Totally, and it's still so early, but the potential is huge.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's bring it back down to earth for a second and talk about that report on U.S. officials using Signal to discuss military operations.
Right. So what happened there?
Well, basically, a transcript was leaked of a Signal group chat where some high-ranking officials were talking about military strikes in Yemen.
Okay.
And the problem is that Signal isn't an authorized platform for sharing that kind of sensitive information.
So why is that such a big deal?
The biggest risk is that someone could leak that information to an enemy.
Right.
In this case, it was a journalist who was accidentally added to the group.
Okay.
But it could have easily been someone with bad intentions.
And that could have had serious consequences.
Absolutely. So this whole incident has raised some serious concerns about security within the government, especially when it comes to using personal devices and unsecure platforms for official business.
Okay, so to wrap things up today, we've talked about the uncertainty in the market and how it's affecting big tech.
Right.
We've talked about the antitrust battle brewing between ARM and Qualcomm,
Yeah.
the crazy competition in the AI space, and the growing influence of Chinese companies.
It's only going to get more intense.
The recovery of advertising revenue for X,
It's a slow climb back.
the major progress being made with crypto regulation,
Finally.
the impressive growth of Mercury in the fintech world,
They're one to watch, for sure.
and the mind-blowing possibilities of biocomputing.
The future is weird.
And we also talked about the importance of cybersecurity and how even the government can make mistakes.
Right.
It's amazing how connected all these different parts of the tech world are.
Yeah, totally. It's all one big ecosystem.
Understanding these trends is crucial for anyone who wants to stay ahead of the curve.
Whether you're an investor, a business owner, or just someone who's curious about the future.
So here's a question to think about. With biocomputing becoming more and more real, how will our understanding of intelligence change in the years to come?
Yeah, that's a big one. Or how about this? As AI and crypto become more regulated, how will that affect innovation? Will it help or hurt?
Those are some great questions to ponder.
Definitely things to keep an eye on.
Thanks for tuning in to Byte-Sized Tech.
Thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed the episode, like, comment, share, and subscribe for more fun tech discussions.